Today's topic, I wanted to talk a lot about, something I've become very passionate about, is this idea of data-driven product management and driving alignment in organizations. A little bit around, what I think makes for great product management, some of the Andy patterns I've seen, then also how to build, these data supply chains and the ways to think about using data to help drive your business, and some of the things that can help provide the alignment that your business can need and use around your product. James gave me a great intro, and I really appreciate that intro. First of all, I am the Chief Product Officer at data.world. I'm one of the co-founders. In addition to being a Chief Product Officer, I run the majority of our engineering team side by side with our CTO. That's a responsibility that we take on together, and it's really kind of central to a lot of my philosophy around product management. Have both the responsibility for defining the product, but also the accountability of delivering it. I think makes things a lot more real. A little bit of fun, trivia. I am the father of boy-girl twins. They're 4. You've probably already heard them playing on in the stairwell behind me. It is part of our reality nowadays. I'm sure you'll get a kick out of it at some point. And if you see one of them wander in here, that is definitely a thing. I think that a number of us have to deal with nowadays. I already mentioned I did move here from Canada, so please forgive the accent, especially when I say about and house and things like that. You're lucky. I saw one of my good friends, Mark, on the participant list there, and he certainly knows that, especially after I have a couple of beers, it definitely gets stronger, so you're lucky that this is in the middle of the day instead. I've had a really varied career, and I think a lot of this career has informed how I think about software engineering, about product management, and about the use of data in these things. I've had what some people would even call a little bit of a schizophrenic career, where I've jumped around from role to role. I've done everything from interaction design to program and product management. Ultimately, I actually got back into, it seems weird, but a lot of people's career progression into product management usually comes out of engineering, and then you don't actually go back, right? I actually went back. I decided that I wanted to do engineering again, to build engineering teams and actually have my hands on keyboards, because I think for me, one of the most important parts of what I do, and just, take the software industry out of this, for me, one of the most important things in life in general is to always be building things, to always feel like I'm making something and being creative, whether, it's a playhouse I screwed together with 2x4s and plywood in my front yard for my kids because we don't go to the park so much anymore, or, music with my band, or software with the company. This is really an important thing to me, to continue to be creative and to continue to be steeped in the act of putting something out there in the world. Just generally, I like building things, and building data.world over the last 4 years has been really, really important to me. We ultimately got the idea from data.world because of my experience. I'm going to step back here at Homeaway, at running that traveler team, where we were trying to be significantly more data-driven in how we led and ran our marketplace, and to have accelerated Homeaway from doing like less than a dozen A/B tests the year I started to almost doing 1,000 A/B tests. We ended up in an environment where keeping track of the data and analytics work that was getting done, trying to broaden the participation in that data and analytics work as we added a data science team, as we built out a data lake and shifted from a data warehousing type environment to more of a data lake structure. It was really difficult. And what I noticed was the lack of kind of both transparency and rigor in data analytics that software engineering had. I lived through the dot-com cycle, saw the introduction of Agile and open source, saw the impact that it had. But data analytics work had continued to be kind of this lone wolf thing. But the most effective far and away, the most effective product managers we had at Homeaway VRBO were the ones that were really steeped in data, the ones that were steeped in what our end users were doing with the product, and the patterns in the marketplace writ large. In particular, I worked with two brilliant guys, a guy named Bobby Burns, a guy named Eric Moore. If you happen to know them from the Austin scene, the two of them always had a finger on the pulse of what was going on with our customers, with our users, and with our consumers as they went through the funnel. They knew how and where to dig into the data. It made them so effective. And so myself and another one of our architects started talking about what would it take to make people more effective in this way. And so to this end, I want to talk a little bit about data.world and how I view what good product management is, and how, what a good product manager does, and how being data-driven can help what good product management is. If you are familiar, and I know a lot of the audience are product managers, with the pragmatic marketing framework, which is, kind of a reference canon for how to run product management and what it means. Now, good product management, according to the pragmatic marketing framework, really has three legs to stand on: technical product management, product marketing, and strategic product management. At data.world, and as we've adapted to an agile world, you see some of these worlds shift. And at data.world, we've really embraced this. We've always also really embraced this idea of, the responsibility for the definition of the product and the accountability for the delivery of the product falling into the same hands. So in our environment, our engineering and managers also take on the product ownership and technical product management for our product, in addition to delivery management. This is really enabled by a lot of modern techniques and processes like continuous integration and continuous deployment. So our engineering managers don't have to worry as much about just making the trains run and getting releases out. So they can focus on what our business needs and what our end user needs as well. We're also lucky in that we make a technical product for relatively technical people. And so it's relatively easier for our engineering leadership to put their heads in the mind space of our end user. It's not always perfect, but it definitely helps. We do have a director of product management. We do have product management as a discipline at data.world, but our director of product management is significantly more focused on global product strategy, really looking at our overall positioning in the market, packaging and pricing, and figuring out how to position where we're going and building that product vision, looking 6 to 12 months out, not looking, 1 to 3 months out. This has really enabled our, sales success and product marketing teams to really get a great impression and view into what we're building, and to make sure that they're really representing our product well. And then also for us to wrap in what our director of product, a guy named Tim Gasper, wonderful, wonderful person, and incredibly good at his job, to really bring back a lot of, quantitative market analysis to us to let us, brainstorm and come up with the ideas of where we want to take the product. And then obviously we have product marketing. That function actually sits in marketing in our organization, right? And I think, the reason I present this is so that as you're thinking about, effective product management strategies and how to make your organization a little bit more data-driven, you can think about the roles involved and how we rolled that out at data.world. I'd be remiss, and I get on my high horse a lot, if I didn't talk about what I think actual bad product management is. And if you think about, kind of the anti-patterns we look for, and I look for even when I'm interviewing for the position or talking to people who are interested in product management positions at data.world, in my previous roles, I've seen variations of these anti-patterns. And I do want to point them out because I think both of these prevent building a data-oriented product management environment and aligning the entire business around product management. I think, or around kind of data-driven cultures. The first Andy pattern that I want to call out is the ideas person, right? The person who gets into product management because I have all the good ideas, right? Self-styled Steve Jobs types who think that they have the greatest ideas. In fact, I think the best product managers aren't even ideas people. They're really great at synthesizing and listening and being empathetic. They're like, I once heard really great product managers compared to music producers who are bringing all the best ideas together and figuring out how to distill them and how to align people around them, right? I love the music producer analogy because you think about a band, a lot of bands have a lot of dysfunction, and a great music producer figures out how to get all of those pieces working together. All the individuals have great ideas, great creativity to focus on the best of those ideas. I think the second Andy pattern is that of the project management or program management product manager. Now, sometimes, a great way of aligning people is around the idea of a project plan, but shouldn't be the primary job of what the product manager is doing. As you get into more project management oriented product management, you'll start to see in a lot of organizations almost an explosion of the product management role. I actually think a really good rule of thumb to look at here is, you really don't ever want to get more than one product manager for every couple, even 3 or 4 dev teams. Like, I think a great ratio is like 1 to every 20 engineers for a product manager, which I know probably seems a little bit on the low side, but it's when that number starts to creep up that you start seeing, well, my job is really, I take the requirements from the user and deliver them to the developers, the old office space analogy there, and that's something that we want to avoid. Here in Austin, the other thing I want to talk about is being product-led, right? And what does being product-led in an organization actually mean? I think, and I see this a lot. This is very much an Austin thing. So those of you that are joining from other parts of the country, this is something I've seen a lot in our community here. This desire for your company to be product-led. And a lot of Austin companies, which I think are very pragmatic, it's part of our culture. We like to dig in, deliver value, and go. But a lot of the companies and startups here in town sometimes, have people have this impression that they're very sales and business led. Well, the fact of the matter is, you have to have a business. And if you as a product manager want to be able to lead your company, you have to be steeped in how your company does business, how it makes money, and the value it's providing to the users. To be a purist and it's all about the users, it's all about customer engagement, and not think about what the overarching business plan is to build alignment between the users, the value your product provides, and how your company does business. Providing alignment, knowing the business, and aligning all the parts of the business is the best way to make your business product-led, right? To enable your business to attack markets is really the best way to do it. And if you don't know your business, if you don't know, great thing that I ask at a lot of conferences, I'm like, how, and particularly when I'm talking about engineering process or product management process, and I'll be like, hey, you want your company to be product-led? How much money did you make last quarter, right? If you don't know what the revenue of your company is, frankly, you're not in a position to lead your company, right? And if you expect your company to take your leadership, you need to know the fundamentals of the business, the economic value you provide, and how that business is actually run. You have to lean in there. This isn't a magic world, and where just doing right by users all the time just magically creates a functional business. And so if you want to lead your company, you have to be well versed in all aspects of your company and be prepared to play that aligning role through all parts of the company. Now let's talk about how we get that alignment, right? I think one of the best ways a product manager can start providing that alignment with the organization is to bring data to the conversation, to start instituting data-driven product management. And when you start bringing well thought through data-driven arguments to the table, it's amazing how a lot of the opinion that goes into decision-making in any organization can start to drop away. Folks like Jim Barksdale would say, bring data to an argument with me, because otherwise all we have is opinions. If we're going to go with opinions, we're going to go with mine. And that's valid. I mean, data can really break through the noise and help you get over that, the highest paid person's opinion syndrome that you see in a lot of organizations. But the way that you build a data-driven culture and allow people to participate in it, the way that you use data can really impact your success in building a data-driven culture and using data to build the alignment that can lead to a product-led organization that I think, at least in this audience, we would agree that we would all want to work in, right? I think one of the first things that you think about when you think about data-led product management, where I hope I'm going to give some folks a different way of thinking about some things today, is A/B testing. I even mentioned, back at Homeaway, helping to take Homeaway from doing like a dozen A/B tests a year to doing 1,000 A/B tests a year. The thing about A/B testing, and it's great, I think A/B testing is actually a wonderful way of doing optimization. We practice it a lot at data.world. However, A/B testing is a great way to optimize an existing flow or a funnel and get you to a local maxima. Doesn't necessarily help you find the global maximum for your business. It also tends, A/B testing, to be very introspective on the product and user flow itself. It doesn't reach out into the market and introduce external signal or even forward-looking signal around what the market might be demanding, right? So you got to think to yourself, how do I incorporate more data analytics to help my organization and to provide that aligning function, rather than just A/B testing? Having a data-driven organization is not about A/B testing, the living crap out of everything. It's about using data in smart ways to drive the right behaviors in your organization. I want to make another call out here. As you start thinking about building a data-driven environment, a lot has been made in the last even decade. We'll call it decade. I think, it's 2020, so we might as well stretch it back that far around the importance of data science. People have built data science teams. The data scientist has become, it's been called the sexiest profession of the 21st century. It reminds me actually of the late 90s, early 2000s, before the dot-com bust, when every company had to be a tech company. Well, guess what? Every company now has to be a big data company. Every company I know of, and even a lot in our customer base, are rushing out to hire 100-person teams of data scientists and trying to add ML and AI, right, to hit this future where we welcome our robot overlords and decisions are automatically made by these wonderful AI and ML models. Well, the fact of the matter is, particularly if you work at a small to medium company, right, it is the role of the business intelligence team of the data analyst, who unfortunately I think a lot of people look as sort of old and kind of nerdy at this point, right? But the fact of the matter is, if you want to do AI and ML, you need a certain amount of data to do it. That data has to be heterogeneous in a certain way. And if you want to build models, there's a lot of just good old-fashioned analytics work, counting things. In fact, at data.world, we don't call data science, we call it product science, because we want to avoid the trap of trying to make everything about building AI and ML, and instead make it about doing the basic analytics that we need to do to understand what people are doing with our product at any given time. I found this meme as I was putting together the presentation last night. I think this captures it really, really well, right? And I think you want to think about that, right? You want to think about how can we make simple data-driven decisions using the basics of the analytics, particularly when we don't have the kind of data environment that we need. You can still get a lot done. You can still make a lot of decisions. And in fact, it may be an easier and more effective way to understand the environment you're working on and to drive decisions, right? As you start thinking about building a data-driven culture, and you're like, why aren't these things taking, right? Why are things taking so long? Why can't my business be as data-driven as the next guy? And this is something that actually I thought a lot about at Homeaway when we were getting, when we were competing directly with Airbnb. It's like, why does Airbnb use their data so effectively? And a lot of it is because they built this idea of a data supply chain. I really personally love this book, Winning with Data by Thomas Tunges. He is a venture capitalist at Redpoint Ventures, but I think he's written the best business-focused book on how to build data-driven cultures and how to instill this idea of real-time data-driven decision-making throughout organizations. Companies that stumble building data-driven cultures, we've seen this time and time again, kind of run into four main problems. One of the first main problems that we run into is this idea of the data breadline, which is, it is so hard to access the data. Only certain classes of people, data engineers, DBAs, know how to get at particular data. And so accessing it becomes kind of a hamster wheel of shooting an email off, getting a spreadsheet email back to me, wondering why a column isn't there, asking that person and shipping that spreadsheet off to an analyst to do some calculations on it. By the time you've done your analysis, the decision's already been made or the market's already moved on. So we don't want to create these bottlenecks and these breadlines. Obviously, there's the age-old problem of rogue databases and data silos. The one special person who has access to one special data source or has massaged data in some way is sort of hanging off the side of their desk. They're the ones that know how to do it. You even see this like in big companies like Tableau. We heard about their Tableau sales team. You know, a company you think should be incredibly data-driven, where their sales team had one dashboard that was run by one sales guy who like put together a forecasting dashboard. When that guy left, they actually referred to this dashboard internally by the guy's name. It was I'll just call him Bob to protect the innocents. It was like the Bob dashboard. And they're like, what happens now? You know, the data obscurity is actually a problem we had a lot at Homeaway. This is the third big problem that Thomas Tunges describes. I think data obscurity is really important because, like, as you try to drive this out, explaining to people what the data means, how to use it, how to interpret it, what column X, Y, or Z means is incredibly important because if you can't build those definitions, if people can't understand it, you can't build trust. But not only that, people won't be able to jump in and start doing explorations on their own. And finally, oh, this is a big one. It's even a big one inside data.world today. Is this idea of the data brawl, which is we've all been taught and we're told, look, we're going to go to this meeting, we're going to make some decisions. It's going to be a controversial topic, but we need to decide. And you know, we're going to make this decision based on analytics that two different groups have built. These groups end up with the same definitions or are trying to build analytics around a topic or concept. You know, and then we show up, we look at the metric that we all want to look at, and the two groups have completely different numbers, even though they are purporting to report on the same thing. You know, and that's because, like, a lot of times the definitions of our metrics, the calculations that we use can be arrived at many different means. So getting to that state of reuse and reproducibility so that we don't encounter these brawls is really important. You know, so how do we get over this? And, you know, I think one of the biggest things that we can help drive within organizations, and you see this in the most effective data-driven organizations like Netflix and Airbnb and Lyft, you see companies that have made major investments in teaching their organizations how to use and how to interpret data. I think one of the most effective things that you can do while you're teaching people around the concepts of data literacy, one of the most important topics in data literacy, and this just isn't for you know, making product decisions or making business decisions. I think one of the most important topics that we can teach anybody around is the idea of bias. Different kinds of bias that can exist, whether it's recency bias, confirmation bias, any of those things. I've become a real student myself of the different kinds of bias because I think it really impacts global decision-making. Even if you look at a lot of the things that you know, are impacting society today, a lot of that comes from pre-built biases that people have, and they can definitely impact data as well. I think, teaching people how to overcome their biases in the use of data, but then also how to look for biases in data itself can really help to reduce the number of these brawls that happen, but also create a much more egalitarian and democratized decision-making environment within organizations. Another big topic that comes up when people talk about building data-driven cultures is this idea of measuring what matters. I've got another slide on this later. And I think that's another big topic and a big meaty one that you have to consider what's right for your organization as you build out your data supply chain, which is the question of, do we measure everything, or do we measure only the things that we care about? I happen to be a proponent, especially with modern tools and technologies, of trying to collect all the things. Especially if you're a younger company, you just don't know what your magic number is yet, right? And I think there's a lot of Silicon Valley lore, a lot of reading you do on venture capital blogs, on startup blogs around oh yes, I figured out the one number we needed to measure and optimize for to make my business grow and hum. The fact of the matter is, especially if you're in a nascent market, is that you won't know what that magic number is without a ton of experimentation. And if you're not collecting data from the get-go to facilitate that experimentation, then you're never going to find your magic number. The magic number just can't come about by putting your finger in the air and brainstorming and being like, aha, I know session length is the magic number for my business, or aha, I know if I convert on this one action, all of a sudden everything is going to be great. You need to create an environment that encourages exploration, and I think that collecting many things is a good thing to do. Now, you may experiment on what the one thing is that you want to measure and build a good funnel to do that, but I think it is fundamentally important to try to collect all those things so that you can go back and test new hypotheses around things that can move the needle for your business, right? Now, all right, data supply chain time. Let's talk about kind of overall architecture of how you build out this data supply chain. As a product person, you're probably very familiar with real-time and evented data sources, things like Segment, Mixpanel. This is web analytics here, right? However, if you really want to build a data-driven culture, you got to look at more than just the typical product-oriented streams of data that you might have coming in, right? You'll have traditional transactional sources that you're going to want to consider as well. But don't forget this stuff. Like I said, good product management and being a product-led business means bringing in business data as well. This is where, through things like marketing automation systems, through CRM systems, these are data sources that a lot of people ignore when you're trying to, map out the entire business data landscape, right? And the thing is, you can get a lot of your forward-looking data from these business sources because things like your customer success team or your sales team are going to be the people that are collecting this forward-looking data as out there mining for prospects and things like that. Now, most modern data supply chains are then going to go through a load step where you're going to load those into a data warehouse. And I can't say enough good things about both Snowflake and BigQuery. There are other great modern data warehouses, Databricks as well. I think we're in a real golden era of infrastructure where wiring up these load chains is very, very easy at this point. And so regardless of what you happen to choose, this is a step that you're going to take. I'm not talking about ETL here. I actually think we are in a world where, ELT style, data pipelines are absolutely achievable in a very short amount of time. Now, after you get your raw data in your data warehouse, you're going to want to get into your transform step, things that turn the raw data into business consumable data artifacts for the rest of your business to use. Now, that's where you're starting to see things like dbt come up, our own product, Grapho, which is a data integration product that we have, things like Matillion. These are only examples. I don't endorse any of these except obviously our own. But this step overall, this is where you got to start exercising caution. This is where a lot of people start trying to sell you silver bullets, right? This is where you do have to start being planful and have an architecture. Decide on fact and dimension tables that are going to help your business make data-driven decisions in easy ways without having to write complicated queries or without having an explosion of data assets that help people do. This is where being a product manager and bringing our product management skills to bear on the entire data pipeline can really help build a program that the entire organization can participate in. And then we finally get to our consume step. This is where a lot of the fun starts, right? This is where you start getting into your BI tools and whatnot, right? And this is where people can really start getting into analytics, but this is also where people can get into trouble. At Homeaway, we literally had over 600 Tableau dashboards. I had to keep a cheat sheet on my desktop to be able to figure out which one I needed to look at to figure out like what, where my team was going to get their bonus, right? As a engineering manager, once you build out this data supply chain, right? And as a product manager, it's really important to remember that you got to add analytics and this idea of logging those analytics to your definition of done. You got to maintain that quality and maintain that rigor. And part of your definition of done needs to include what you're tracking from any new bit of functionality that you actually deploy, right? And when you do that, now, okay, so you got this supply chain, now you got to figure out how to get everybody on board. You got to figure out how to get them aligned around this data supply chain and start making decisions based on it rather than just like bringing opinion to bear. Doing that is going to mean building trust in your data, building quality, teaching people how to use the data, et cetera, et cetera. Now let's go back to our data supply chain, right? Because of modern tools and technology, a lot of this can happen in seconds or minutes, right? Now, obviously there's engineering effort and lift in building out that side of the chain, but even that can be done in a matter of weeks or months. It doesn't have to take years, right? The problem and where your bottlenecks or your breadlines occur, where your data brawls happen, is in this back half. It's like once you start doing your transforms or start trying to hand people over these ad hoc tools, these self-serve BI tools, when you're trying to create this data democracy, then you see this explosion of data artifacts that become really hard to interpret and really hard to use. It becomes really hard to reuse other people's work here, right? And the problem is that we see, and what we're trying to solve at data.world, I would even encourage you to think about, and what friends of mine who are really effective at this, here in Austin, we have a company called The Zebra, which is an insurance marketplace. And they've become very, very effective at this flow where they actually have they have a director of data product management who really knows their stuff, but is really focused on this knowledge capture element of like, how do we create these long-lasting leverageable data artifacts that our whole business can create business value around. I think this knowledge capture area and where you see a new category of software here is this idea of a data catalog. When we started Data.world, this is my one shameless plug, my one true shameless plug for my own company, is that we started Data.world with this idea of being a knowledge management platform for data analytics. We had no idea this category would kind of grow up while we started the company, and we'd start to call itself data catalogs. Data catalogs is the evolution of metadata management, and it's this idea, it's a place where people can coordinate around data analytics work. I think we built a great one. There are obviously other people in the space, but as you think about building a culture around data analytics and data-driven product management, you're going to want tools to support that. And just like, when we adopted agile software engineering, we had to shift our tools from, big long MRDs and product requirements docs to agile tools like Jira and GitHub. You're going to see that in data analytics as well, as you want to become more efficient and data-driven there too. I think another really great way to drive data literacy and to start driving this process is to have your whole company adopt almost a scientific method, right? I think we all should be asking ourselves right now, are our hands really that clean? I think that is an important thing to think about. But this kid did it obviously use the scientific to answer this question. I loved science fair when I was a kid. I loved this idea of the scientific method of asking the question, of forming a hypothesis, of documenting the results. I think this is something that we can really use and reuse as a method in our organizations for how to ask questions, how to teach people how to ask questions, right? And if you've managed this, maybe you're saying, hey, mission accomplished. I've built a data supply chain. I'm going to have my data-driven culture, but there are still deeper problems, right? As product managers, we have to focus on building a data-driven culture, and we're not going to have data all the time, right? I think we have to bring other tools to bear. This idea that we can take qualitative information and make it quantitative. Say what you will about Net Promoter Score as a tool. This is just an example for me of how to take qualitative data and make it quantitative, whether it's mining sales calls, mining customer feedback. It's like, how are you going to take the input signals that you have, make them quantitative, and drive bias out of them? And that's something that I think you always have to look to as a product manager who's looking to be data-driven, not opinion-driven. Another great tool to drive success is to think about things in terms of the OKR, the objective and key results way of setting goals. This gets back to this idea of, not necessarily a magic number, but of measuring what matters. You may be measuring everything, you may be collecting everything, but what are the, every quarter, and this is something that we do at data.world to help our data-driven cultures, every quarter, we set goals for every team based on certain numbers that ratchet up to our top line goals. And we almost consider each of those numbers that we want to try to move a little mini experiment to see if we move a particular number, whether it's, market qualified leads or, session length, any number of these gamuts, do we actually move our top line goals of end user engagement or revenue growth, right? And we build those attributions. We take this OKR methodology to heart as a real aligning function. And that's something I think as product people, we can really help drive in our organizations. The other thing I want to lean into here that I think is really important when trying to build this kind of organization, and if you're thinking about being product-led, and this is almost a little bit of a non sequitur, but I think it does relate, is pricing and the topic of pricing. We could do an entire other presentation on this. But have you ever noticed that it's really difficult sometimes in a lot of organizations, particularly if you work for an enterprise software company, to nail down who owns pricing? Pricing is one of those things that is really difficult to set. It's really difficult to identify who an owner is. And a lot of people play a lot of, frankly, passive-aggressive games around who owns what and how pricing should be set. You ever wonder why most enterprise software companies don't publish pricing numbers on their websites? Because everybody gets antsy talking about pricing. When you have pricing discussions, product thinks they should own it. Marketing thinks they should own it. Sales thinks they should own it, right? And ultimately, the answer comes down to, well, whatever the sales guy can kind of go out there, and that provides signal in and of itself, right? By having product management start with packaging and pricing, I had a really good friend once tell me, he's like, you don't have a product unless your pricing's on the website. And so we did that. I think we're one of the only enterprise software companies out there that has put their pricing, their enterprise pricing, not only our community pricing, but our enterprise pricing. And this is how we monetize data.world. I mean, obviously you can sign up for a free individual account, but our primary monetization strategy is to sell enterprise deals. When we sell enterprise deals, we essentially stand up an internal data.world for you. But we have actually published our enterprise pricing on our website. And we had the confidence to do that because Tim, our product manager, who I told you about in the beginning, the very first job I gave him when he started data.world was, hey, go sort out our enterprise pricing. And by really looking, pricing has this opportunity to be one of the greatest aligning factors in any given organization, because really pricing is about how you capture value for the product that you sell. And the way that you capture value for it totally defines how you package that product, what features are included at each level, how you approach the market with it, and kind of the unit economic value that your users extract from it, right? And so by doing really thoughtful and thorough data-driven analysis on what customers are actually extracting value from in your product, it can really help you lead the market with confidence through your product and even help define what that outward facing packaging for your product is. One of my closest mentors, when I started looking at hiring product managers, he kind of gave me a little trope. I'll kind of I'll expose this here. It's like, you know, the guy you're looking for, look at somebody who wants to own pricing and be very thoughtful and analytic about it. When you find that guy, you've probably found your product manager. And honestly, he was right. I mean, this is one of those top level strategic things, again, that people don't like talking about, has a tendency to get like that can gets kicked down the road. And, you know, it can really define how you go to market in a really concrete way, and can be one of those things that then you drive a lot of other data analytics off of, right? With that, I'm going to leave everybody with some great reads on this topic. If you want to delve in more, I think these 4 books, Winning with Data, I already referenced, obviously Measure What Matters by John Doerr. But then a lot of the books in between get down into the nitty gritty of how you want to build a data-driven culture. And so a lot of things you want to lean into in terms of teaching your organization about how to be data-driven that I think are awesome. I recommend reading them all. I also have another kind of fun book, which I like to recommend. It's not so much product oriented, but it's called Weapons of Math Destruction, which is all about bias in data. Super good one. And then finally, kind of the conclusions here, right? I think you've heard a lot of this from me. Great product management focuses on alignment and data literacy, putting people and process over infrastructure, and building this efficient data supply chain and actually product managing it so you can use data to align your company. And if you do that, you know, obviously profit lives at the end of all of this, right? Yeah, if you want to dig in more, I am an open book. I'm incredibly easy to get a hold of. My email address is jon@data.world, and I am my name everywhere else. I love meeting people. I love networking. Please keep in touch. I see James has popped back up on the screen. So I'm actually going to stop screen sharing, and we can do a little bit of Q&A before we wrap up.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, so if folks have some questions, just go ahead and either put them into the Q&A or the chat area, and go ahead and fire those off. And Jon will take a run out of here for the last 10 minutes. And while people are thinking about their questions, I guess, Jon, a question for you. Obviously, your business is really taken off, certainly with the pandemic and so forth. You guys have done a lot of interesting things. You may want to say, you know, if people want to learn more, if people want to engage, what would you recommend to them?
Yeah, you know, we are a fully multi-tenant SaaS product. We've been around for 4.5 years. We have a tremendous community, tons of open data. We've supported communities like Data for Democracy in the past. We have a COVID data resource hub. We're leaning in and are planning on publishing data sets related to the current racism problem that we have, and helping people sort through that. You know, we take a lot of pride in being really community oriented. You know, the great knock-on effect of that is it gives a lot of people a lot of great opportunity to try our product out. So I encourage everybody to create a free account on data.world, jump into those community resources that we've got out there. There are amazing communities in data.world to participate in. And you'll get a great feel for our product all at the same time. I think it is important that we bring data to bear on a lot of these discussions, but also help people understand the right ways to use data too, so that you know, we can have really meaningful discussions in the future. I see one question here. Actually, 3 really great questions, kind of across the board. I can start with the question from Joe around data governance. I think data governance is a great topic. We like to practice a term, and even when we roll out enterprise customers, Joe, we are leaning into this idea of agile data governance. I think data governance is incredibly important to building trust and security and privacy into the data practices of organizations. I also think that data governance is a great way to build data literacy, to help educate people on things like bias as well. The question you have to ask yourself is, what style of data governance do we want to practice? And I think you have to look back even at software engineering and say, if you want a data-driven culture, you have to participate, you have to encourage inclusivity and collaboration in your data practices. But you can still govern your data in that, right? Like, you know, because you have transparency and inclusivity and you're operating in an agile fashion doesn't mean that you still don't have standards and that you still don't have places for documentation around data and things like that. I think, though, that applying agile principles to the idea of data governance is really important, because if you do that, then you can actually build a community around your data practices rather than this sort of top-down, lockdown approach that you see a lot of more traditional institutions take. I think history is going to repeat itself here, right? Companies that have like a kind of a top-down approach to data governance are like, your data programs are going to fizzle, right? But if you can figure out how to build data governance in a way that encourages participation and delivering business value, then I think you'll see your data programs flourish. All right, let's see here. Lots of great questions. What do you think about software like Heap? I think Heap's great. We use Segment. We also use Mixpanel at data.world. You know, I think that it's important that when you build out your software, you do actually have a plan for how you tag your product. I think the analytics, logging, and tagging should actually be part of your code and explicit in your code. In cases where it can't, obviously tools like Heap or other tools that allow you to like auto tag your platform do work. But I find that a lot of the data that can come back from those sorts of things can be noisy. But they're a great start, right? But I do think, you know, kind of tying this back to the data governance question, is you really got to build your analytics, logging, and tracking into your part of your definition of done, so to make sure that like the right things are being logged and really all the things are being logged in a durable way. I think that's my biggest complaint about platforms like Heap or other kind of auto tagging things, is that, you know, it becomes too fragile over time. So that's my opinion there. Opinion on data visualization. I like it, but you know, like lies, damn lies, and statistics, it's a tool. You can have great visualizations that really do a great job of explaining how something works. And then you have crap visualizations that totally lie to you, right? Like, you just have to go look at Fox News and they'll show you a visualization every other day that doesn't even have a labeled y-axis, right? So I think it's a hard question to answer, right? I think they're an incredible communication tool, but they have to be done right. I also think that like you can't necessarily force your company into using one particular tool, because in the tool chain, I think about visualization platforms like code editors, right? Like, I wouldn't force any engineer working for me to use any, like, one person is going to like VI, you know, another woman might like Emacs, right? Another person is going to like you know, a full featured IDE. Some person might like Tableau, another person Power BI. I don't think we should stop that, right? They're tools that we use. But yeah. So yeah, I guess that's my opinion on visualizations. You know, and Varun had, how do you drive product decision in the absence of data? You can always go get data, right? And this is actually kind of my point about like turning the qualitative quantitative. It doesn't have to be big data. I think big data, the excitement around big data is overplayed. I think some of the most valuable data sets in the world can be small data sets, right? Like, you know, you can always go out there and do qualitative user studies and turn them into quantitative things. When we launched data.world, we did well over 200 interviews. We tagged every single one of those interviews. We actually analyzed what people were saying. one of the first things we learned was that like, I was real excited to go build GitHub for data. And through the process of doing those 200 interviews, we collected the data that said, nobody in data analytics knows what the heck GitHub is. So maybe not call your product that. But like, like you have to do those things, right? I think, turning the qualitative, quantitative and looking for ways to do that, whether it's surveys or really just like, how do you tag? How do you count? How do you always look for ways to draw the patterns out of the data that you're collecting are really important.
Well, great. Jon, I think you've addressed the questions that have come in. I know we're at the bottom of the hour. So one, Jon, I just wanted to thank you for sharing all your expertise and the things that you're doing at data.world. That was awesome. And again, I thank you for being with us, taking an hour out of your day to do that. For those of you who are still on the Zoom meeting, if you haven't, it'd be awesome for you to join our community at productsthatcount.com. Go ahead and create a profile.
Yeah, let's see here. I just want to comment on a couple of small things.
Yeah.
Laura, yes, Tim Gasper is an incredibly smart guy. I don't know what I would do without him. And let's see here. Oh yeah, and Kay Vala here. Feel free to reach out to me. Always happy to support another Waterloo grad, especially if you're in. I don't know if you're in Austin or not, but go Warriors.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you everybody for attending today, and thanks again to James and Jon. We've got 2 more webinars today, and more, every Wednesday coming up. So please check them out, and thanks again to our sponsors at Amplitude. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, folks. Thanks everybody who joined. Thanks, Jon.
Thank you.
Take care.